we have some first-hand experience with how our piano playing body parts work in isolation, it's time to start putting it all together. The first thing we need to do is make sure we understand what it looks like and feels like to move each of our body parts independently of each and every one of the other body parts. It turns out that this ability to move them independently is a prerequisite to be able to move them interdependently. So let's take a look at each of those parts one by one. Let's start by putting together all those things we already know about our piano playing bodies, shall we? Let's get a nice balanced head, nice balanced torso, and our shoulders, just let them go. Right? C-3PO arms, and our hand, nice and poised to play, naturally angled out somewhat, and our fingers in a nice, naturally curved position. All right. So what we're going to do from this natural starting place is we're going to take a fresh look at how our torso moves. So what we're going to do is, while our torso is moving, we want to pretend that all the other body parts, our shoulder, arms, hands and fingers, are frozen into one solid piece. Okay? Kind of gently frozen. They don't need to be rigidly frozen. Just kind of gently frozen for now. And while we're doing that, let's go ahead and tilt forward from the hips and return. Right? Now again, this part needs to be frozen, so we don't want to do this. Right? We don't want to do this. Right? It's this. So notice when we do this, right, your shoulder, arms, hand, and fingers just are going along for the ride. Right? Great. So now let's take a look at the other motion our torso is capable of. Right? We can tilt to the left and tilt to the right. Now remember, we've done this before. Don't allow your butt to get welded to the bench. Right? One more motion. Let's go ahead and rotate. Right? Clockwise. Counterclockwise. Now I know what you're saying to yourself already. You're saying, golly, that looks so stiff. It looks like a darn robot. And you're absolutely right. It does look like a robot. But don't worry. We're going to start to free that up by doing one simple thing. Realizing we have three motions available to us. Right? What we need to do is cultivate the sense of having all three motions in a constant state of freedom. Never having any one of those degrees of freedom, if you will, locked or rigid. All three of those motions need to be in a very free and flexible state. Right? So let's try that. Right? Let's compare having one motion available to us. And look how robotic this looks, comparing to having all three of those motions available to us. Look how much less robotic this motion looks, right, compared to any of the other ones just used in isolation. Now I want to make a couple more points here about the torso. First thing, you might notice that your torso is kind of big and heavy and slow, right? Let's prove it to ourselves. Let's try to move it really fast. Right? It just doesn't want to go. So that's a lesson learned, right? If we want to play with freedom and ease, we can't push it beyond its natural capabilities. And the other point is this. Even though it's kind of big and slow and it seems like maybe that's cumbersome, the truth is that if we use it properly, our torso now contributes to feelings of groundedness and stability at the piano. Okay, now let's isolate our shoulder relative to the other body parts. So now our shoulders are going to be doing the motion. So here what we want to do is we want to keep our arms, hands, and fingers gently frozen. And this time we want to keep our head and our torso gently frozen as well. Right? So let's go ahead and lift our shoulder. Right? And notice that your arms, hands, and fingers go along for the ride. Right? Great. Now let's go ahead and push down. Right? Let's go ahead and let's roll the shoulders forward. Turn. Notice in each case, right, your arms, hands, and fingers go along for the ride. Let's roll them back. Then return. Now, as you remember from earlier, your shoulder is a very special case in that it makes its maximum contribution to your piano playing by doing almost nothing, right? Well, really your shoulder's only purpose is to allow your arms to move freely. So we don't want to put our shoulders in a condition that restricts our arm motion. So the way to cultivate that feeling is to have two things in mind. One is there's never, ever any need to lift your shoulders, even if it's just a little bit, right? Even a little bit of lifting will cause an awful lot of tension, right? And number two, don't try and hold your shoulders back, right? Don't try and restrict them. Don't try and place them anywhere in particular. Just let them go.